My name is Rachel Morgan Trimmer. I'm a neurodiversity coach and consultant. So I help entrepreneurs and organisations with their neurodiverse staff. That's people with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and so on. I've lived with neurodiversity all my life because I've got ADHD and autism, but I only realised it fairly recently. I work with a lot of different neurodiverse people. I work with them one-to-one, and I also train organisations on neurodiversity. So even though I don't have all the neurodiverse conditions, I do work with people with dyspraxia and dyslexia to get that first-hand experience, if you like, or the first-hand reporting of what it's actually like to live with these conditions. My educational experiences were quite typical of people with autism and ADHD, particularly the ADHD, because I know a lot of university students do leave their work till the last minute, but for people with ADHD, that's quite extreme. And it's also very common, even these days, that people are ending up in university without knowing they have a neurodiverse condition. And that's even the case with some dyslexics as well. We assume dyslexia gets picked up early every time, but it's not the case. There are still people finding out, after they've completed their education. So I think my personal experience is that from the actual work point of view, the ADHD was obviously a big problem, but it also helped because I had the ability to hyperfocus. And because ADHD people work under pressure very well. So although I had no support, I managed to, without even realizing I was doing it, I managed to adapt my conditions to what I needed to do. So it was leaving it till the last minute. It can be quite difficult because you don't know why you can't just get on with it like your peers can. So I think with all of that, as well as the academic side, there is that feeling of being excluded because you don't often understand why you can't do things the same way as other people, because I never did. I didn't get why people would start an essay before, earlier than the night before it was due to be handed in. And I'd want to do it. I go to the lecture and say, all right, I'm going to start this now. And of course I never would. And so I was always quite jealous of people who were able to do that, and kind of there was a lot of not fitting in, more with the autism as well, because autistic people are very often excluded because our social communication is different. We don't often behave the way people expect us to, and so on. And I think the isolation and the stress can contribute to mental health issues. And I had mental health issues in varying degrees, often quite severely, the whole time I was at university. I think the experience of being at university is often the first time that people are learning and developing these soft skills. Like, it's the first time for some people you've got to organise your own work. That there's not somebody breathing down your neck all the time about when something's got to be in. So you've got to take on a lot of responsibility quite quickly. And I think many students are able to do that. They're in a position where they can take that on board. I think for neurodivergence or neurodiverse people, I think it's an opportunity to develop some of those coping strategies to take into the place of work. And for a lot of us, it's also an opportunity to actually develop the strengths of our conditions. So I mentioned with ADHD, it is stressful to leave everything into the last minute. It's bad for your sleep because you're up late writing your essay and so on, but you get it done. And I think once we appreciate that that's a skill, it's obviously not very good time management, it's a coping strategy, but recognizing that you have the ability to work under pressure and you can multitask, because a lot of people don't, that is very much a skill that you can take into the workplace if you recognize it as a skill rather than a deficit. And in terms of something like autism, again, people will criticize you for being weirdly organized and weirdly rigid and fixed about some of those things that you do, like I wouldn't start an essay until I had a cheese sandwich, for example. But that's another area where you develop those organisational skills, and those can help you when you go into the world of work, because if somebody is there to organise your work, it starts to reduce your stress because you know where everything is. So I think those are very important. you've mentioned earlier about communication skills as well, and I said autistic people have, they are described as having communication issues, which a lot do, but a lot of it is communicating with neurotypicals. That's the word we use for normal people rather than other autistics. Communication skills are essential in any workplace, unless you're working entirely on your own, which is extremely rare. So I think university is a good opportunity for anyone, especially autistics, to develop their communication skills, because for so many people it's the first time they've been in contact with people from different parts of the country, different backgrounds, different sorts of culture and so on. And I think for me at least that was really an interesting experience, because I grew up in Surrey, which is it's not a very diverse sort of place, and I found that being able to communicate with different groups actually helped me to feel less isolated, and did develop my communication skills, because you're always looking to find common ground. And you find as well that sometimes people, say from another country, may not be as judgmental, because they don't know you're being weird. They think that's just how British people are. They don't know you're autistic, and they don't know many British people. So that was quite an interesting one, and I think it also helps you to start to understand other people and develop your own communication skills to take into the workplace. And that's not always verbal. It can also be, obviously, your written skills will be developed as well. So I think there's a lot, obviously, that you do learn at university. And I think the key thing for neurodiverse people is that some of those things that you might perceive as flaws, to see what skills are coming out of that. So for ADHD, I said it's the ability to work under pressure and to multitask that you can take into the workplace. And for autistic people, although you may have communication issues, the flip side of that is that you tend to be open-minded and non-judgmental. And that's great in the workplace, because it just enables you to collaborate so much better with your colleagues. I think probably the most important thing is that people are supported, and their tutor or their lecturer or their manager or whoever they're working with and for is communicating openly with that person. That is absolutely the first step, because without that you can't do the rest of it. Now, for people who are neurodiverse, we have the same needs as other people, but we also usually have additional needs. So everybody needs light to work, obviously, but with neurodiverse people, we might much prefer natural light to overhead flickering light. That's it's a sensitivity issue. A lot of autistic people can't cope with certain sensory input. Just having a desk by a window can make so much difference if you're able to do that. And having a room with the door shut, again, if you're able to do that, having your own space is really, really important. It's not just so you can concentrate, but it's also so you've kind of got your own space, your own environment. Having things the way you set up is important for everybody, but for neurodiverse people, it takes on an extra importance. It's quite hard to explain why if you don't live with it. But if you do have a neurological difference, the smallest things can throw you off, and it's both your responsibility as an individual and the responsibility of your manager or your tutor or whoever's overseeing you to ensure that you are able and set up to do your best work. So some of the things that are very helpful, there's a lot of technological help available these days. Ayoa is obviously one. It's very, very appealing to both people with autism and in fact all neurodiverse people, because of the colour, because it's colour coded, and that's such a shortcut for people like us, because we can see things so easily, and it's just anything that helps us organise is incredibly useful. A service that I use all the time is called FocusMate, which pairs you with an accountability partner. There are lots and lots of PhD students on there just because they need it to get their work done. So it pairs you by the hour with a real person, and that's been incredibly helpful for a lot of people since the pandemic started, because if you're used to working with someone, it's just having somebody there, even if you're not talking to them, really, really helps get your work done. Again, it's quite hard to explain why it works, but it does. And that leads me on to my next point, which is the fact that it helps reduce isolation. Because one of the issues we have right now, even though we're talking a lot more online, we're not seeing people in real life. And the isolation can sometimes impact us more than we think it is, because we're thinking, oh, we're on Twitter, or I'm WhatsApping people, or even with what we're doing now on Zoom, we still feel like we're communicating, and we are, but it's not quite the same. And again, as with so many of these things, that affects normal people, but it affects neurodiverse people in a slightly different way, and it can be in a more significant way for neurodiverse people as well. So it is important to obviously remain safe, but also do those activities where you can have perhaps something like a socially distanced meeting in a park if lockdown rules permit, or perhaps if you're not able to meet people in real life, having a one-to-one is can often be more productive and helpful than just having a group meeting, because you're able to communicate a little bit better in a safe space. And if you want to meet up with people, people you work with or people you study with or whatever, but you don't really know what to talk about, having an agenda, it sounds a little bit weird, but having an agenda, having something specific to talk about can help you focus your thoughts, even if that's just look at the latest stuff I've bought online, because it's a little bit more interactive. You're showing people kind of what's going on in your life, which is what I think a lot of us have been missing. So I think that the two key things the main thing is the communication, and then beyond that it's having technological support. I didn't mention screen reading software, actually. That's incredibly useful for dyslexics. So that's the technological support, and then doing what we can to combat some of the isolation that people might be experiencing. Well, I think one of the most important things to know about neurodiverse individuals is that in the workplace we are 30 to 50% more productive than normal people. The 30% figure is from the Harvard Business Review, and the 50% figure is from a study that JP Morgan did with autistic employees. So if you don't care about anything else, the fact that we are more productive should, I hope, convince people that we are very much worth considering, because we are that productive, we are fast learners. And also bringing neurodiverse people into the workplace has benefits for everybody, because inclusive workplaces have better revenue, they have better collaboration, leadership, perceptions of leadership are better. So there's all these benefits, and it's all backed up by various studies that you can find online. That, we do come with challenges, I'm not denying that, and most of us do need some kind of adaptation, which in 60% of the time doesn't actually cost anything. It's just something to do with the environment or whatever. But the benefits of having neurodiverse people in your workplace or in your social circle or whatever far outweigh the challenges. So I think just to wrap it up, it's not just that we are as important as anyone else, it's that we have special skills and strengths that other people don't have, that we can bring. And I think one of the nice things about neurodiverse people is that because we live with our own challenges, we tend to be very empathetic, and we tend to be non-judgmental and open-minded. So as well as being very useful and productive in the workplace, it also makes us very good friends.